in Dorset. It doesn't seem too long ago since the autumn conference in Bournemouth. And one of the main points that I made there was about how our education system is working for some of our young people, but not all, because some people are left behind in it. Particularly, an example I gave is that we're not training enough people to do medicine. There are 80,000 applicants this year to do medicine and to study medicine at university, but there are only 8,000 places. And so many people who want to get on and fulfill their dreams and do what they want to do in education don't have the route to do that. It creates a skills gap. And on top of that, we then bring in other people from other countries, take other doctors from around the world to take the places which British students should be doing. British young people should have that opportunity. It's wrong on many levels. But I was quite amazed. Now, after saying this at the conference in Weymouth, I was quite amazed a couple of weeks later when I switched on my television to watch the news, and I saw the Health Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, making a big announcement on government policy, and he was saying we need to train more British young people to be doctors, there's not enough places at university, we need to stop taking people from abroad to do those things and fill the skills gap. And so, as very often, UKIP are leading the way and saying things first. But not everyone believes me about that. So I did a little experiment at Bolton. I was up in Bolton a couple of weeks ago. And I said I was going to start talking about something which is something that many people are not talking about. And I mentioned something called the demographic bulge. That's not a phrase that is used very often. It's used a couple of times in Parliament in the last year, buried in the Hansard. I'll explain what that is. The demographics of young people at the moment in schools are quite strange. The year groups from about 12-year-olds up to 16, 17 are very small in comparison to normal. But the year groups, the age groups from 5 to 9, are much larger. And because of that, there is overcrowding in our primary schools. We're going to need about 500,000 extra places in our secondary schools over the next 5 to 7 years to cope with those extra people as they go into secondary schools. And not many people are talking about it or thinking about it, and if we don't do something about it, it could be a looming disaster. So I was quite amazed again when I saw a huge article about it in The Independent a couple of days later. And 6 days later on Question Time, I actually saw the Education Secretary, Justin Greening this time, talking about the demographic bulge and the need to create 500,000 or a lot of extra secondary school places. So once again, we're leading the agenda, and thank goodness we are. And we're talking that common sense that we need to talk about in this country. Now, that could be a looming disaster, but I do see an opportunity. We are going to need to open 500 to 1,000 new secondary schools over the next 7 years to cope with it. And I say that at least half of those schools should be a grammar school. We need to make sure that there are grammar schools in every town and city and local education authority area across the country. Not just in the fortunate areas like Kent, I think Dorset as well, where you have them already. And there doesn't seem to be much central planning of where they're going to open. Now, at the moment, the only way a new school can be opened is through the preschool route, the academy route. And that's fine in some areas. But people who are putting money into those, opening those schools tend to cherry pick the nice areas. Cherry pick perhaps areas in southeast England, London as well. But the areas where you desperately need them, in the north of England, in Blackpool, in Hull, in Sunderland, in South Wales, in the Thames Estuary, are left behind. There has to be some kind of national planning for this. I think we need to really change the system And I would say that local educational authorities, once again, should have the power to open schools in their areas so that we do implement this program. And we know that politicians across the spectrum support it, even in the Labour Party. They say they don't, but look at what they do. Jeremy Corbyn went to a grammar school. Diane Abbott sent her kids not to a grammar school, she went one better and sent them to a private school. Emily Thornberry sent her kids to a grammar school, so Harriet Harman sent one of her kids to a grammar school. Tony Blair didn't, he sent his children to the London Oratory, which is non-selective, but it was one set of the London Oratory. It's probably the most selective, non-selective school in the world. Very nice to know. Now, we need to do this because every year we're told that the number of schools that Ofsted gives a good and outstanding rating to is increasing, 90% this year. We're told that GCSE performance is going up. It's gone up from 50 to 60% of kids getting 5 A to C, A star to C grades in GCSEs. It's going up every year. But strangely, England and Wales, Northern Ireland, the other countries of the UK, it's all rated separately now, are slipping down the international PISA rating tables. So something doesn't add up there. The government figures say we're getting better, but the international assessment of where we are is getting worse. We need to be competing with kids and young people and giving our young people the same opportunities to excel academically as young people in China and Vietnam and South Korea and Hong Kong. It's these countries which are excelling away from us because they've learned what we do well and have taken what we do while we've abandoned what we've done. I want to see kids in Sheffield beating kids from Shanghai in maths Olympiads. I want to see kids. I want to see our young people from Ipswich being as innovative as young people from Israel. And I want to see kids from the Thames Estuary in South Wales doing better than students from Hong Kong and Vietnam in every area. Now, as well as grammar schools, we also need to open more technical schools. Yes. Which is an area so now, the university technical schools idea, which was introduced 4 or 5 years ago, was a good idea, but it didn't take off. And I think there are 3 reasons for that, and I have solutions for all of them. Now, of course, because we do in UKIP. It didn't take off because, one, they found it hard to attract young people at the age of 14 who were already in comprehensive schools. They were working against the demography. As I mentioned earlier, that those age groups going through secondary schools are especially small. But in 5 years' time, the demography of young people is going to start working for technical colleges to open at 14 and to attract people at that age. So we mustn't abandon that model now, because there's going to be a huge need for that in 5 years' time when the demographic bulge gets to that age. And we need to be ready, because education needs long-term planning, and so many of the other stay-along parties just use it as a political football, and they don't think about our young people first. We do, and so we need to stick with the program. It's also very hard sometimes with the careers advice that is given. It's quite shocking how little impartial careers advice and how patchy it is in this country in 2017 around the country. In some areas and some schools it's good. It depends on individual careers teachers. But all young people should have impartial careers advice, I think, from the age of 13, so they know all the opportunities for them, especially opportunities to get a technical education and do an apprenticeship, which is so good for many of our young people, which they don't even know about. How can they do it if they don't know about it? It's simple common sense. And we we need to generally change the mindset of our culture. Grammar schools are often vilified because people have the mindset that academic education is here and everything else is down there. It's not true. We need different kinds of schools for different kinds of people. And not to say one is better than the other. We need academic homeschooling and specialist schools for people who are good at sport and dance and performing arts. No one would say that if someone's talented at sport, they shouldn't go to a sports academy, not even the Labour Party. They say that about academic schools. We need to change our mindset. Now, let's talk about universities and what people go on to after school. And of course, we have some of the best universities in the world, and that's something to be fantastically proud of. And they are wonderful for the right people. But they're not the place for everybody. And one of the worst decisions ever made was Tony Blair's government's decision to try and get 50% of all school leavers going to university. It's madness because it's not the right place. I don't think that was ever achieved, but people are still trying to push that boat, but it's not right. Many young people will be far better off doing a higher apprenticeship and learning a trade, rather than going and picking up lots and lots, thousands, tens of thousands of pounds of debt. But the boat is still sailing in that way, and nursing has become now a graduate-only profession. It's madness. But things like nursing, vocational training. And from next year, policing is going to become a graduate-only profession. Whereas it ruins opportunities for many young people aged 18 to 21. It saddles the taxpayer with a bill which they shouldn't have, and it creates a skills gap which we shouldn't create and never needs to be created in the first place. The higher education sector needs to become lean and mean again. Focus on high quality academic subjects that add value to the students that do them and to society, like STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, maths and medicine, and design. And also subjects that pass on our culture and open up the mind, like history and the classic arts. That's what we need to do with our universities. But there's another problem in universities, and that is political correctness. The growth of political correctness is so stultifying that no platforming is taking place across the country on campuses from north to south and east to west. And speakers who would be able to give different opinions, interesting opinions, challenging opinions that students need to hear are being no platformed. People as diverse as Katie Hopkins, Peter Tatchell, Jermaine Greer, Ayaan Hirsi Ali and Milo Yiannopoulos have been no platformed in this country, and students are losing out because of this. There should be no more safe spaces in university, and if you can't hear an opinion without running to your safe space and acting like an adult crybaby, you shouldn't be at university. But on the other hand, this just shows how far the world has turned upside down. We're not giving students the ideas that they need at university and challenging them, but there's ideas which are politically correct and damaging and confusing to our kids are coming into our schools. Who would have thought 5 years ago that it would be politically incorrect, according to some reports I've heard, to call children boys and girls? To talk. A book has gone out, I believe, sanctioned by the Department for Education to primary schools, advising them not to use the words mothers and fathers in case it offends anybody. And just this week, I've only got 1 minute. I'm afraid. Can I have half an hour? I'll try and wrap up quickly, but this really does need to be talked about because it is important. An announcement was made this week by the Education Secretary, Justine Greening, that in primary schools, sex and relationship education is to be made compulsory. And I've never had so many letters of outrage and worry and concern in my inbox since I took the position as the education spokesman. This is wrong. And they're sugarcoating it by saying, well, only the very youngest kids will have relationships education, the sex education will come later. But the guidance hasn't been written yet, it's going to be populated. And she has the ear, well, many of the groups who are pushing things and making materials that I could only describe as pornographic aimed at 7-year-olds, and I've seen some of these things. I'm very, very worried about where this is going. UKIP stands apart now from all the other parties, including the Conservative government, to say this is wrong, and if you don't want sex and relationship education in our primary schools to teach our very youngest kids things which are damaging and confusing, you only have one party, and that is UKIP. It's wonderful to have come out of the European Union, but there's still much to do in this country. We know that the Lords are full of people packed in by Tony Blair and David Cameron, who are the London metropolitan elite. We know that the MPs in the Commons, a majority voted to remain, but they are pretending through gritted teeth that they're on the side of the 52% of people who voted to leave EU. More now, I think, because all the things they said in Project Fear didn't come to happen. So if you did have another vote, I think there would be many, many more people today who would be happy to leave the European Union. But we need to make sure that our education system starts working for all young people, that we purge it of the political correctness which is damaging, and we get those grammar schools, those technical schools, and we start training our British young people to do British jobs to make the best of all the opportunities which are going to come with us as we come out of the European Union and become a free, upstanding, great and independent nation once again.